Runners Only with Dom Harvey.
Runners Only with Dom Harvey and the legendary Dai Henwood. G'day, mate.
Oh, g'day. Legendary. I love it.
Well, I mean, I was doing some research yesterday and I was thinking about how long I've known you, and you are a legend.
Yeah, by the way, I've seen your research. It looks very hefty, but you've also double-spaced it like I used to back in school to make my essay seem longer.
Yeah. Also, mate, I turned 50 last week, so I need a big font. Otherwise, I got to wear the glasses.
No, I remember meeting you, back in the old radio days, promoting various shows for comedy festivals and that. I think it seems like I've been around for ages because I started pretty young. 1997 was when I started doing comedy, and I would have been 19, so 18 then.
Yeah, with thick black hair, like the shiniest black hair imaginable. Like you swam through an oil slick.
Yeah, I really had a lot of. I was always very hirsute. I had I was full guy at school, eyebrows joined in the middle, and they joined my hair line, and but to prove it, I shaved my head except for a sweatband of hair, because I was always the one. If you're gonna be mocked, you've got to lean into it and own it.
Well, my first memory of you, I'm not sure if this is the first time we met, but I think it is. It was the Edge Breakfast Show with JJ, Mike, and Dom. We were trying to work at a different level to other shows. So when we had comedians in, we'd try and sort of rip off the format of, Letterman and Leno. And we'd say to Arj Barker, give us a leading question and you can give us some of your routine. And comedians were notoriously protective about their material. So we'd want to say to Arj something like, how was the flight over? And he'd be like, let me tell you about airline food.
Yeah.
But comedians were so protective about their routine, and we'd be like, you need to understand, it's like, if we just give the dates of your show, people aren't going to buy them. They need to think, this guy's funny, where can I see him? And then you came in, you had a CD with an instrumental on, and you rapped as this character you were doing at the time, P-Funk Chainsaw.
Yeah.
And you walked out and we were just blown away. We're like, this guy's the fucking deal. This guy's prepared, he's organised, he's funny.
So I have, it's like I understand why comics do that, but then what I don't understand is you're selling a show, you're going on to do PR for your show, so a lot of people can come in and then be a bit sullen, they're not answering questions properly, they don't feel like they want to be there, and it's like, this is my chance, man. I've got to get it.
To shine.
Yeah, I've got to get out there, and also people listening, if they go, oh, he's funny, or that's different, I'll go and see that show. So also, I think happened to be going out with publicists help, who were like, and also I myself come from a radio background in terms of the fact that I was early in Radioactive down in Wellington. Then when I moved up to Auckland, I did an arts and culture show on George FM when that was just a little tiny thing on Vermont Street in Ponsonby. I'd done bits and bobs in commercial radio, I was aware that you've got to have content, and it also made it fun coming in, because when I put effort into an interview, then the next time I come in, people are way more relaxed because they're like, oh sweet, he's bringing something to the table.
I feel like, you've just had a level of professionalism before anyone else. And it's something I've always respected and admired.
That's what my dad taught me, because I grew up in a theatre, and he was always, look, it's a job. It is a job, so you've got to work at it, you've got to prepare at it, and also a thing he taught me, which I think has really stayed with me, is that people actually have quite similar set of skills. If you get to a point in an industry where you've moved up a bit, people have a very similar set of skills. So if you're easy to work with and professional, you'll often get the job over other people, because if you're hiring someone, you go, oh, they're really fun to work with and they're a real diva.
If someone's a pain in the ass,
we'll go with the fun.
Yeah.
We'll go with the fun. And also, it's New Zealand. Word gets around, even in competing radio stations, everyone to a point is mates. So if it gets around that you're easy, and look, how many I don't even want to count how many voice breaks you've probably done.
Oh,
right?
mate, I couldn't count either.
But if you have a guest who comes in regularly and you go, right, we don't actually need to prep that much, they deliver, we'll probably get one more voice break out of this than we're hoping. That's gold.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know, because then it's not, okay, well, we don't know how this interview's going to go. We've got 2 voice breaks, but they might clam up. You know, we've got to... But if you can sort of look through your morning rundown and go, right, tick, tick.
Dai's coming in great.
Tick, tick, tick.
We record him and plug 2 breaks.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was like plugging breaks in radio.
Yeah,
and you did that very well. So now we're recording this in early February 2023. You turned 45 on Tuesday. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
This might seem like a weird question, but do birthdays feel different now with your diagnosis?
Yeah, I've never been a massive birthday person. Like, they sort of mark time, and I'm an extrovert on stage, but still quite an introvert.
Yes.
And this year I thought I'd have a bigger party. We've got a family place out at Piha by the beach, and I've had, over the last 3 years, I've been private with my diagnosis. People sort of knew here and there, but I've had quite a staunch group of around 30, so I wanted to show them some love and put on some kai for them, and had a party, and it was a bit different because when you start putting the clock on things a bit more, or not putting the clock, because I don't know how much time I have. I might have heaps, I might not. Just being aware of that clock does make moments stand out a bit more, and it was awesome, you know. And I really love turning 45. I actually think. Even though my 40s has been a bit of a shambles on the health front, and not a shambles, it's been dealing with some heavy stuff. It's actually the happiest I've been and the most grounded I've been. So no, it was an awesome birthday.
Why do you think that is? Just more you're more mindful, more appreciative.
Yeah,
of moments,
I sort of feel like I've figured what life is out, like I've figured it out, and now back in the day I used to go to Japan quite a lot from when I was 13. My dad toured Phantom of the Opera, not the Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom of the Opera. There was one.
Was there another one?
Yeah, written by Ken Hill. It was actually written before Andrew Lloyd Webber. Same storyline.
Oh, okay.
And he'd tour that round Japan, and I'd go over. I went over a couple of times with him, and one of the actors was a Buddhist, and I had I've always had an interest in sort of spirituality. I've been allergic to organised religion, but something about spirituality. And she took me to a Zazen temple, and I learned Zazen meditation and all that. And that's recently just massively come back into my life, and I sort of feel way more connected to everyone. I don't have the I've sort of dropped any hustle, and I just like taking what comes along and living life.
I feel like you were like that. So you've been living with this. I feel like there's an easy timestamp you can put on it. You've been basically dealing with this since the beginning of the pandemic. So early 2020.
It was like April. April 2020. So we went into lockdown. March. And the hardest thing is before that, the year before that, in August, my father passed away. He had had 18 months of dealing with sort of stroke-induced dementia, which was really, really hard. I remember actually one of the first times that had clicked for me. I was doing a radio interview, and they'd thought it'd be funny to ring up my dad and sort of have a...
What station? It wasn't The Edge, was it?
Have a back and forth. and then just, it was during that I went, shit, Dad's not quite there.
Not sharp or not as usual?
Or just different and missing a couple of things. And then it was like, oh wow, that it something's up there. Then I took him to like a rugby game, and we'd scored these lovely tickets in a box, and there are a couple of ex-All Blacks from when I was a kid, sort of in Dad's heyday, and like he's not recognising sort of these old school All Black legends, and I was like, oh, this is something's a bit weird there. So it's dealing with that. Then Dad passed away, and then sort of a few months later, and I'm an only child, so it meant Mum and I sort of were pillars for each other. There wasn't a wider family to share that with, and then cancer diagnosis came along at the same time. I got funding for a lockdown TV show that I was shooting in my garage where I was the camera person. My son, who was 7 at the time, was trying to run the camera.
I remember that.
It was awesome because it was a real Kiwi number 8 wire show that fit the time of lockdown.
Absolutely, lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, completely. But at that same time, I was going through figuring out I had bowel cancer, or colorectal cancer as they call it, and it was in my bowel and in my liver. This is the one thing about cancer I hadn't figured out. So now I have bowel cancer, but it's only in my lungs. It's not in my bowel. I'd never thought. So when it changes, it's still the same cancer.
Yeah, you think lung, if it's in your lung, it's lung cancer.
Yeah, but so it sort of had spread, and I knew nothing about cancer. I've had no cancer in our family. So I was like, I was suddenly just chucked into this learning curve. And I've always been very hands-on with my own life and very responsible for my own life. And then I was chucked into this situation where it was, I have to lean on people who know things. So I suddenly went from having no doctors in my contacts list to now like I've got so many specialists.
Most frequently called numbers.
So many specialists in that. And then it was just scans straight into chemotherapy. I didn't even know how you did chemotherapy. I had to get a port, which I've still got in my chest, that connects to an arterial line, and they sort of jab you at like Pulp Fiction to plug you in. And I was scared of chemotherapy just from TV.
Who wouldn't be?
Just from TV though, because I was like, everyone on TV shows is staggering around with a bandana and
bald, thin, pale, sick-looking, very frail, and vomiting non-stop for days on end.
And I'm not saying it's much different to that, because it's really hard. And so I went into chemo, but then I had to learn. I'm a learner. I've always been intrigued with. Back in the day, I suppose it was like fads, like I was very early on to your Wim Hof ice bath thing. Then he was out early, back in the day, he used to come to Tauranga and just go and sit in the streams.
Yeah.
So like a dude said, come meet Wim Hof, and I went down, but I missed him. And so I was big into your ice baths. I was big into breathing techniques. And so I went, right, I've got to start researching. And I think people who aren't passive patients for anything have better outcomes. So instead of just...
you mean more engaged and...
Okay. Aren't just, I walk in, I sit down, I listen to this, they say do this, so I do that.
Right, so being as proactive as you can.
Yeah, of learning, chemo. What are we trying to achieve with chemo? Because chemo doesn't cure cancer. No oncologist ever claims chemo cures cancer. It's a tool in you're trying to reduce all the tumour load, basically, and then cut it out, or fingers crossed your body figures out how to do it.
I feel like that's a good attitude you've got, because it's sort of like you're the CEO of your own body, right?
Yeah, and so I went, at the end of the day, it comes down to me. I was like, how do I make my body as healthy as I can to do chemo? What tools can I use to tolerate chemo better? So then I just started researching, reading all scientific papers I could. Sort of, unfortunately, with something like cancer, there's a lot of snake oil that comes along with it. I put that down to the fact that no one knows where cancer comes from. No one knows how to cure cancer properly. So,
and I suppose out of desperation, people will try anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to start being very wary of sources and that, and there's a lot of good info out there. And so I was like, I stumbled across thing like, okay, if you fasted in and out of chemo, it made you tolerate it better, and it had more efficacy. So I went, I'll give that a bash, and then I went, shit, this actually massively helped me deal with chemo, and there were some studies behind it, and I'd sort of show my oncologist the studies and go, to me this says I should do it, what am I missing? Like, I obviously can't, I'm not trained to read these. And he sort of has been so supportive, and also that thing of, if it's not toxic and it's not going to hurt the treatment I'm doing, then I'll give it a go. And then I went from chemo to got almost half of my liver removed. I got my bowel, a huge section of my bowel taken out, and I had an ileostomy bag, which is people mainly know colonoscopy.
Right.
So ileostomy bags, the exact same principle, just on a different part of your bowel.
So you still have that now, or no? Do they?
No, so I had that for 3 months, and then while the bowel, where they stitch the bowel together, sort of reconnects, and then got it reversed. But while I was getting it in that, they found some stuff in my lungs, on which they rung me on my birthday. I remember it. I'd taken my daughter, who she's 6 now, she was 4. She like staying in a hotel overnight was amazing. So I took her to a hotel and we stayed overnight and had pizza, and we'd just gone for a swim and came back and get a call, and there, hey, we've found 3. You're all clear, but we've found 3 spots in your lung.
Just you and your daughter in the hotel, not your wife and your
just
son?
me and my daughter. We're having a daddy-daughter thing, and then I was...
Do you manage to like keep a brave face on for her, or like how do you...
that sort of just put me in a spin, because that was a moment. With cancer, there's never nothing's black or white. There's never good news or bad news. Everything is grey. Everything has... So it's like, we've found these 3 spots, but where they are, we can operate. So then when I had my bowel removed, I had 1 lung operation. Then I went back a month later and had another lung operation. Luckily, due to my breath work and everything, I had sturdy lungs, and I tolerated the surgeries well, and then sort of came out, and then in September, just before we went into that weird lockdown, that one that went up to Christmas, where only Auckland was in it.
That's September 2021.
Yeah, I was clear. It was all clear. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Then my blood started going weird in December, and then last year in May, they found another spot, which I got taken off, and then I had a break, and I thought things were going well, and then they found 10 more tumours in my lungs, and 1 against a lymph node in my windpipe, and they were like, well, we can't operate on, there's too many to operate on. I mean, you could take a whole lung out, but then that actually causes more... That would impact my life more than at the moment having them there. So I went back into chemo, which was so confronting, because it was the thing I didn't want to do, because chemo is really full on.
Is it, what are they? So they inject you with it, right?
Yeah, so like I go in, you get plugged in your chest, and then I sit in there in the hospital for about 4 to 5 hours. Then I'd take it away in a baby's bottle on a bum bag for 2 days, where you just sort of cruise around feeling a bit whacked out. And
what's it? Is there anything you can compare it to? Is it like really
it's like having a brutal hangover,
Yeah.
right? It's a brutal hangover, which is a similar. I think it's similar because it's your liver's processing all this poison, and So the only thing that really got me through was THC and medicinal cannabis, because it's like what it's proven to have in terms of efficacy of helping chemo, of helping you tolerate chemo. It helped me amazingly through my surgeries, because I can't take opioids like tramadol and that.
They react badly.
Yeah, I get really upset stomach and constipation and all that. So I was blessed to sort of discover, not like I discovered weed. I've lived in New Zealand. I've recreationally used it, but then actually discovering
the medicinal qualities of it.
And using it medicinally rather than just recreationally. So that massively helped. And then for me, it was just working on mindset the whole time, working on mindset and trying to, because the thing is, what the things they know that you can help is basically exercise, diet, sleep, and meditation are things that...
I feel like you were doing all that stuff pre the diagnosis, eh? Maybe for a couple of years. I feel like there was a transition in your life.
There was.
Yeah, so you were doing all that stuff?
I basically spent 10 years trying to get sober, and then I got sober in 2019. And I'd been transitioning that way. The thing was, I've always been relatively fit, and that's where a lot of anger came in, because I'd be out and see people who are morbidly obese smoking ciggies and smashing a pie, and I'm like, I've had my hard times and my party times, but not drastically more than other people,
moderation.
Not drastically more than other people. So there was a lot of anger that I had to deal with, and I'm a classic passive aggressive Kiwi from back in the day. I didn't let my anger out; it just bubble up in weird ways. Like,
I don't see that in you at all. I think you hide it quite well.
I definitely had a passive aggressive sort of side, and I was never, when I was a boozer or a partier, I was never aggressive. I was full party guy, which sort of was detrimental in a way, because then people don't see that you could be suffering with a booze issue.
Yeah, right.
And I started to get all my emotions under check, and I wasn't getting angry. I was meditating more. I was bringing more meditation, I suppose, to everyday life. And the hardest thing is, I know you're a runner. I was loving my running. I started...
Yeah, I saw you at even the Queenstown Marathon. I saw you at a couple of events.
I loved the Queenstown Marathon. I sort of... I'd done 2 half marathons, and then I was still running half marathons quite regularly just in training, and I was always sort of under 2 hours. I was so I was at a nice place, and I was at that point where I was like, well, I'm getting under 2 hours now. I could really push for a quicker half marathon. Maybe I will try a marathon, and then just with chemo, the running, I couldn't run.
Yes, that's so.
It was just, so then I had to realise, actually I'm trying to exercise too hard out. I need to just do everything slowly, like instead of doing, before my diagnosis, I was having this amazing time training with Monty Beetham, and he had a small group of people he was really training up, and it was just hardcore exercise, boxing, physical cardio, weights, a bit of everything. And then I was like, I've got to do the opposite of this. I've got to work out slowly. So I was like
walking, or
so instead of going, right, I'm doing 100 push-ups today, I'm going to do 20 slow, perfect push-ups. I can't touch my toes properly. I'm going to get to a point where I can squat in a full deep squat for 5 minutes, sort of, like you'd see in Indonesia or something, how those sort of cultures just squat the whole time. Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to learn to squat. I'm going to really work on my knees. There was a guy knees over toes.
Knees over toes. Oh, very familiar with knees over toes.
So I went knees over toes, guys. So I started adopting a few of those, and I went, I'm going to go for mobility and strength, slow strength and that. And that sort of really worked. And walking, like do an hour walk a day, which is a blessed. We got a dog just after my diagnosis, and I've never been an animal person. I mean, I've had 2 fish and a turtle in my time. But
yeah, fish don't count.
Yeah.
Why? What was the decision to get a dog?
My wife loved dogs. The kid sort of wanted a dog. It was the perfect.
So it was nothing to do with the diagnosis. It was
No, it sort of was a little bit, and it was the perfect distraction, and animals, like, I mean, there's so much proof with animals of just patting them, hanging out with them, how much it helps.
Oh, it's so cathartic.
Your body as well.
Yeah.
So and it also means when I didn't feel like going for a walk, I was like, oh, the dog's got to have a walk. And then once you'd know it with running so many times, you're on the borderline of maybe not wanting to, but once you actually get a few Ks under your belt, you're happy you went out.
Oh, yeah, the endorphins. You never regret going out for a run.
No, so I'd take the dog out for an hour, and then I'd just work where I could on my fitness. And then I read this amazing book by this guy called Tim Baker, who he is a surfer. He's a professional surf writer, and he got stage 4 prostate cancer. And prostate cancer is a whole nother kettle of fish because they have to remove all the testosterone from your body. You basically get chemically castrated. It's a bit almost similar to if you're going through transition. And he got it quite young, so it's quite confronting for a young guy to have their testosterone removed. It creates a lot of
it's confusion.
Yeah, and a lot of hormone imbalance and stuff. So he wrote this book, and he said just focus on your meds, which was meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. And it's a really confronting book, but it gave me so much power.
Is that because is it sort of like focusing on the things you can control?
Yeah. And he's a big proponent for integrative oncology, which there isn't a lot of, which is about empowering people with knowledge around nutrition, knowledge around spiritual practices, which traditionally Western medicine has stepped away from because it's very hard to prove you can't prove nutrition's role in a way in cancer because it's very hard to study nutrition because people lie about what they eat and so forth. So I just took that on board. That really helped me. Then I was like, I need to be public. This was nagging away at me. And I never wanted to go public early in my diagnosis because I didn't want a crying thing that was about the cancer. I wanted to get it out there in a way to show people I'm living with cancer.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because the day we were recording this, it was exactly 2 weeks ago that the incredible interview that you did with Jackie Brown on The Project went out. So it was like 5 minutes of TV time and then a 45-minute clip on YouTube, which I've watched twice. And have you watched it? It's a hard fucking watch.
Yeah, it's...
Jackie's a good friend of yours. She did a good job, but your vulnerability and just complete transparency. It was...
Yeah, that was the hardest thing in terms of coming out to talk about it because I've always been... I don't know whether this is a comedian thing or I'm quite transparent and quite authentic. So my thing is, once I got going on the interview, I couldn't really hide anything. The hiding things is not me, and that's also part of why I started to want to be more public with it. Was because I do stand-up, I do corporate talks and that, and it was like there was this...
It's a big part of your life that
this elephant in the room that I'm not talking about and I'm just sort of mucking around. And then I was like, actually, if I added this into my talks, I could really help people, because there's all these tools that I'm using that could translate to different.
Not to mention, from a personal perspective, massive weight off your shoulders as well. And can I say, like, you, and I don't know if I think this is a good thing, but I don't know. You were a very good mask. I listened to some podcasts you did yesterday, including one you did with Carly Flynn, and she asked some questions that she asked all her guests, like what your bucket list item is.
Yeah.
Which she's probably, and she shouldn't be, but she's probably mortified about that now. And she asked, what's one thing you've never told another person? And in the back of your mind, you must have been thinking, fuck.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Carly knew.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, because I'd just come out of hospital. I was maybe 3 days out of hospital from lung surgery when I did that interview. I think the thing is also I've been very blessed to look very healthy through this whole thing.
Yeah, you look great today.
So I was doing 7 days while I was doing chemo. I had chemo attached to me and I was doing 7 days. So I think because I love doing comedy and I love my job.
Was it like a nice distraction?
Yeah, it was, because there is a day in there when you're doing chemo when you actually feel okay. Well, I felt okay. I can never talk for anyone who's going through anything like that. But it worked for me. It was a coping thing for me. And I just didn't feel, at those times, I didn't feel that I wanted to talk about it. It felt too personal for me. It also is something that a diagnosis like this is just as heavy, I believe, on a partner as it is on me. So any going public affects my wife. We're sort of quite a private little family.
Yeah, you are.
And then it just suddenly felt right. And about December last year, I think it's time to go public, and then it was sort of working out the timing of it and all that sort of carry on, because I mean I have been, the amount of messages I've just been blown away by so many positive ones.
Just an outpouring of love.
Yeah, the odd one that is, this just proves you're a shill for Jacinda, which I don't quite.
What?
I don't quite know how you draw that bow from watching that, but some people are some people. But like 99% of.
But I'm not. You can't be. I'm not surprised. You can't be surprised. I mean, no one ever has a bad word to say about Dai Henwood, and this is a product of I don't know what you've done.
Yeah, I think
you've brought only nothing but positivity into the world.
I think my thing has always been, since the beginning, my slogan was sort of, I'm just a Kiwi trying to have a good time, and that's what a lot of Kiwis are. And I've always been in my work quite picky about things, and right from the get-go, I've been more concerned about the saying no rather than saying yes, and then that sort of that got crystallized for me by a guy, I forget what his name is, Jesse someone. He started CD Baby. He's a famous entrepreneur guy, and his thing was, if something's not fuck yes, then it's no. So then I was like, that actually crystallized it for me, and going, no, I either really want to do something or let's not do it. And so I was in the pissed comic role on C4, just making some crazy shows.
That's what I remember. Insert video here.
Roll a die.
Yeah, you'd go. A lot of people won't even remember this, and a lot of it won't even be on YouTube. But this was a crazy time in New Zealand where you could buy these like synthetic cannabis, like chronic, and those
party pills.
BZP party pills. I don't know if you were on them or pretending to be on them, but you played this like crazy, tweaked out guy.
Yeah, so this is where I cannot believe that the cannabis referendum fell over. When we're a country where you could buy BZP party pills from the dairy, like Euphoria and Red Hearts.
That's right. Oh, the worst hangovers.
And they were quite good at the time, but then you just have this grinding, dry headache.
Migraine for days.
And so I was in that role, and then that got so much. I'd go out and we'd just get mobbed by people because we were talking to people on the street. We're in random places. And I'd just get mobbed in the street. I remember going down to the Buskers Festival in Christchurch, showing up to my venue, and there was a queue round the block. And I was like, shit, this is taken off. And I just had a ball that then played into me drinking too much. Then 7 Days came along, which was amazing. I just loved that. And then as I sort of matured, these other options came up. Family Feud, which was just such a joy to do. Dancing with the Stars and Lego, where I've sort of calmed down and changed my audience. But at the same time, it's people that grew up with me and then might have kids, or they're people who are in their early teens that have got older.
And it's been really nice watching that. Actually, I've sort of watched it from a position of pride, but also almost like a position of envy in a way, because I had the same job that entire time, and so I was doing breakfast radio on the Edge, which is like a youth, like an inverted commas top 40 station. So I was sort of growing up and evolving as a person, but you had to do a lot of the same shtick. And here you were no longer the crazy BZP party pill guy. You were going into these more sophisticated roles, and your comedy sort of changed. And it was lovely watching that evolution. It was really good.
Yeah, it's so funny when you say envy, because then from the other side of the fence, the amount of times I've been at home going, I quite like just a breakfast radio job where I can focus on one thing. And so it's a human, you know, it's human. Yeah. It's always, you go, actually, I wouldn't mind that, because sure, I do this gig, but then I have a bit of downtime here, and then I'm taking on some jobs I don't really want to do. And so no, it's just life.
No, not a bad sort of envy, like fuck die, like a good sort of envy. Yeah. But it's like, I'm sitting here talking about the Kardashians again, and he's getting to act his age.
The depressing thing is going over to, so we go over to Aussie, like for something like Family Feud, to get a vibe of how the Australians do it, what a day looks like filming shows and all that. And so I go over for that, and then went over and was hanging out with Hamish Blake a little bit, and then just sussing out, going, oh, you Aussies get paid quite differently to us Kiwis, eh? Yeah. just because they're niche over there. If you're in a niche, you know, sure, you've got a top radio show over there. That's printing. Oh yeah, money.
Hamish and Andy, 2 hours a day, or so. I think it's just one show a week.
I've never seen people whose pay goes up and their work rate seems to go down. They went
good.
To a podcast, you're getting paid the same amount, and so then that sort of built the thing up of just, okay, I've got to love what I do, because the money. Ironically, I'm in the one industry where the money seems to get less over time, because TV and radio are the things that are now because advertising is everywhere on the internet. Those spots, you know, a spot, and I remember promoting a show, right, and I got sponsorship from I think one time from the Edge, one time from War FM, and one time from the Rock, and they gave me some breakfast spot ads. And you could see how much they impacted ticket sales.
That right, it actually worked.
Oh, amazingly, because advertising was so sought after. Because it wasn't like you go online and, you know how now your brain's almost trained to avoid ads? Because I'll visit a site, even a site like the Herald or stuff, that have a splash ad.
Yeah.
And by the time I'm reading an article, I couldn't tell you what that ad was for. You know how you...
it's like with me with YouTube. It's like I'm hovering on the remote waiting for that 5 seconds.
And so now ads are everywhere. You could tune them out a little bit more, but I think they're still they still have that effectiveness on in media. But no, they were just gold. Yeah. Gold getting those ads.
Well, since we've taken a break from the cancer chat and we're back onto your career, maybe we should just sit here for a little bit. Can Can we go right back? What were you? So your mum Caroline, district court judge.
Yeah.
Dad Ray. I'm 5 years older than you, so I remember your dad on a TV show called Gliding On, which we used to watch. It was an iconic New Zealand show. And what were you like as a kid?
Well, Gliding On, ironically, was New Zealand's longest running comedy show before, and then 7 Days took that over. So yeah, Gliding On went for 6 years. I think I grew up on the set of Gliding On out in Avalon in Lower Hutt. I was a gregarious kid, as I mentioned before. I was an only child. I was always a performer. I remember when I was 5. I remember making a group of people laugh, and I wish I knew what I'd said or did, but I remember the feeling I got, the swell,
the endorphin rush,
buzz of just making these people laugh, that I knew I wanted to be in comedy. And every time I started doing drama, I always ended up as the funny guy, and it just started taking off. And then I discovered a friend of mine at primary school had an Eddie Murphy Delirious, his famous first outing, in his leather suit.
The red suit.
The red leather.
Has not aged well.
No.
It was great, though. It was incredible.
There's some horrifically problematic jokes on that.
Oh, when he's I can't even say, with the homophobic slur in the front row.
Yeah, there's a lot of the F word, and not the swearing F word, the bad F word. But if you take those out of it, and there were his just timing, and he had these amazing routines about his family, and also as a kid, there was so much swearing in it, and it was just
blew your mind. It was the world's best comedian at the peak of his powers.
It was electric, and he was 18 when he did that.
Was he?
Which blew me away. Yeah, so he was 18. He was 20 when he did Beverly Hills Cop, and he was 21 when he did Raw. And the best thing about Beverly Hills Cop is Sylvester Stallone was originally cast as his role, and they started shooting with it.
Really? As Axel Foley. Yeah.
And then they went a completely different direction. And he was so that got me into it. Then I was travelling, and Mum wanted me to get a present for a friend, and I got him a VHS of Robin Williams live at the Met. Robin Williams just then took it to another level for me, and Robin Williams became my favourite comic. His specials were just out of this world. Yeah. And a good comic, when I would watch, he would be referencing these American politicians I'd never heard of, but I'd still be laughing just because his delivery is so funny. So I became obsessed with stand-up. Then I don't know how to get into stand-up in New Zealand. There wasn't really stand-up.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you and a bunch of others have sort of paved the way where it's a viable thing now, but I don't know where you'd start back then.
No, because we had comics like Billy T, but he wasn't doing stand-up clubs like the classic. He was doing variety nights, where he'd do a bit of singing and people would come on, and then you had John Clark as well, but he was TV personality. And then when I came through, there were people ahead of me like Mike King, Sugar and Spice, Tadeda, Andrew Clay, Brendan Lovegrove. They were doing stuff. And then we came up from Wellington to Auckland for a comedy competition, and Ewan Gilmore was emceeing, rest in peace. And I did a double act with a girl called Anna Kennedy, and it went well. And Ewan was, you got to keep at this, man. And then we started gigging. This was before the Classic opened. And
so how old were you then? Like 17?
17, and we're just down the road from where we were recording this at Kitty O'Brien's, which was sort of behind Victoria Park Market. And did that, then the Classic opened. This was in April of 97. Then the Classic Comedy Bar opened at the end of 97, and I started performing there, and then it just took off. I moved up to Auckland. I put all my eggs in the comedy basket. Reece Darby and I got a flat together, and sort of came through. I was lucky enough to come through with legends of, like, when I was working and performing in Wellington. There was Taika and Jermaine. Clement had a double act.
You don't even need to say the last
Yeah,
name.
I know.
Taika and
Everyone,
Jermaine,
any New Zealand knows who I'm talking about. Taika and Jermaine had a double act. Brett McKenzie, and then moved up here and was with Reece Darby and Justine Smith, and just amazing comics who've all gone on in various ways. And then I suppose the hardest part in my career, where I almost gave up, was travelling. I was doing Melbourne and Edinburgh in 2003.
Oh, was this the Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
Yeah.
It's 2000. So that was 20 years ago. So you were 25.
Yeah, 20.
So you'd been doing it a long time.
Yeah, I've been doing it, and I'd won the Billy T Award in 2002. That had given me a bit of money and a bit of courage, and the Concords had been done 1 year, I think, over in Edinburgh, and they'd come over, man, and we shared it, me and Brett and Jermaine and myself and my tech, who was a really good mate, had a flat together.
Right, because you and Brett were, you grew up together, right? Didn't you play cricket together when you were like 6?
Cricket together when, we were 5 or 6.
Right.
And then we went to the same college, and we did sort of drama productions together. Then after college finished, I was in a couple of fringe productions with him, and he was actually in one of my festival shows, and I've always had so much love and respect for him just as a person, let alone. And he was in the Black Seeds, who I used to travel around with, because my best mate Barney is their singer, so during summer I'd just travel around with the Black Seeds. And so then go to Edinburgh, living with the Flight of the Conchords. They're at the bottom of their hockey stick rise to fame. Where
is that when TVNZ wanted, they were prepared to do a show with them, but they wanted to change everything about it?
Yeah, and they went no, and look what happened.
Yeah.
So they were at the point where they were selling out, but to comedians. The room was just full of comics, because the word had got round that these guys were hot. Then they just got their BBC radio show, and they were just ramping up. So we'd come after our shows or whatever, we'd have a beer or somewhere, or we'd meet back at our flat. I would be cancelling shows because no one was showing up, or everyone was walking out of my shows, and they were just flying. So I remember...
It's not a career for the faint, is it?
No, I remember sitting on the corner of a bed just in breakdown of too many hangovers and hard times, and Brett just sitting sort of chatting me through it. And just that juxtaposition of, wow, these guys have found the magic, and I'm so far away from that.
Was that sort of like... was that sort of like a breakdown, would you say?
Yeah, it was, because I lost, not only was it emotional, I would have lost around £10,000, because Edinburgh works on a situation where you need to be about 40% full to pay the venue, let alone your producer's fee, all that. So even if you're successful, you lose money pretty much.
That's so
why would you do that job? And then I came back, and I don't know why I kept going, but I just kept going, and I reinvented myself.
Because what were you doing in it? Were you doing like P-Funk Chainsaw and John D. Bankteller?
Yeah, I was doing late 90s character comedy.
Right. Do you think part of that in hindsight was kind of fear in a way? So it's easier to hide behind a character than actually being yourself on stage?
No, it wasn't fear so much as I came through from an acting background. So I thought you did characters on stage.
Also, a name you mentioned before, John Clark, who was Fred Dagg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose if you grow up on that.
And weirdly, when I was in Melbourne having a similar failing experience, halfway through I went out for lunch with John Clark, and he was sort of giving me a few tips and that, and it was like, well, the great tips, but how do I just get anyone to come and see my shows? And I remember I think he came along, and Alan Bro, who is a great New Zealander who sort of got adopted by Australia, and it was a struggle. It was a real struggle, and I came back and went, actually, I'm going to ditch the characters. I'm just going to be myself. And then I went back to Edinburgh, and I didn't do a solo show. I did lineup shows. Nothing came out of it, but I was getting great response. Then I went back through Melbourne, and I met the woman Jo, who became my wife. And then everything started to pick up. Then I did a Monday night at the Classic, hosting a rookie night. And Andrew Schusterman from C4 was there, and he said, do you want a TV show? And I said, yeah. And he said, sweet, you start next week. This is a guy who'll film it. I'll email you what it's about and go make it.
So that was the beginning of C4. So that was like insert video here.
Yeah, so this is C4 would have been around maybe for a year or so before that, but was just music. It just sort of had, Severe and Nick D and that doing the music sort of shows.
That's right, yeah, and even Clark Gayford was doing a show.
Yeah, Clark had a show. Severe was doing Major Flavours.
Yeah, John O'Pryor was doing a rock show.
Yeah, Jono was a rock.
Shows, yeah.
And then I came on and did comedy between, insert video here was comedy, random comedy, throw to a song, but it was under a broad theme. So we'd do best songs for house parties. We'd go to a house party in Ranui, almost get stabbed, stop someone from being sexually assaulted. Thinking back on it, it was just, I remember one thing, like we're going around the house party, just open this door, and it's just three dudes smoking pee, and one guy seriously about to sexually assault this woman. We bust in very quickly. My camera person quickly gauges the scene. I gauge the scene. So I just run straight up to her, just, hey guys, having a good night. Straight up to her, chucked her over my shoulder. We walked straight out of the house party, called a cab, and said, gave her some cash and went, just get in this cab and go home. This party's...
that didn't make it to air.
No. This party's not going in the right direction, and I think those dudes are not going to do... It's not going to end well. But it was those moments, and that particular moment was, this is going too far, man. We're at this. Why are we in Ranui at a house party? With like people smoking pee. This is just like this is if you were scoping out a location, that's not what you would be.
Yeah, but it was wow, it's amazing. So do you think, had you not made that transition to go from character to being yourself, that you would have ended up just giving it away at some point?
Yeah,
I suppose if you're like 8 years deep and it wasn't working, there's got to be some point where you go, I need to get a job.
Yeah, that was always there. So I'd always been someone who I wanted to work and I wanted to earn money. I mean, along the way, when times have got tough, I was very blessed that my parents sort of helped me out here and there, but they were very strict in terms of the fact of give yourself 5 years. This shit's not working out, you're going to have to figure out how to support yourself. Because so I worked double shifts in bars. I worked in One Red Dog. I managed at One Red Dog in Ponsonby for ages. Had the joy of meeting the wonderful sumo Scotty Stevenson, who he was the king of Lime Bar at the time. And I always worked hard. I played hard, and then I did comedy, and then luckily comedy became the job. And I was a hustler as well. I was convincing Microsoft to hire me for corporate gigs before I had any skills. There was a wonderful ad agency called Republic that also is just around the corner from here. they really helped me out by believing in me and hiring me for a few corporate gigs. I sort of got intertwined with Xbox early on. So I did hustle. I was very determined to go, and whenever I got booked for something, I'd make damn sure I'd do a good job. You deliver. And sometimes it didn't go according to plan. You mentioned the character John the bank teller. It was this bank teller from rural Taranaki that I'd do. I hired to do this corporate gig. I go on, I do 20 minutes. I didn't get one laugh, and it was beyond not getting a laugh. It was like, this room is full of ice, and it's quite hostile, and I don't know why. I walk off stage, and the organizer runs up. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing, man? I went, what do you mean? He went, this gig's for ASB, and one of their bank tellers was killed in an armed robbery, 2 days ago. And I'm doing this bank teller who one big bit of mine is about a robbery. And so it's like, then I look back on it and go, oh my God, it's like I've gone out and done the most distasteful 20 minutes of comedy.
You didn't read the Herald that morning.
No, and then it's like, wow, that really explains the hostility. And then thinking back on it, it's very hilarious, because comics love more than anything a good death story. When comics sit around, you just talk about your worst gigs, basically.
I suppose, good death stories, as long as you've got enough successful stories.
Oh, yeah, as long as you're in a good place now.
If they're all death stories.
If they're all death stories, it's just desperately tragic.
So you mentioned your wife Jo before, so you met her in Australia?
Yeah, she's a Kiwi from West Auckland. She was living in Melbourne. I had an amazing time over in Britain with a guy who's a great friend, Jesse Griffin, who he does the amazing Wilson Dixon character. He lived in Melbourne for ages, so we really hit it off over in the UK. I flew back, stayed with him for a month, and then met my wife, and then we started really...
How old were you guys then?
I don't know, 2005, so late 20s.
Right.
Late 20s, and it was just a really glorious time. I had great mates over in Melbourne. My friend Justine Smith, who's a comic over here, she was my best man at my wedding, and she was living in Melbourne at the time, had good mates there. So I started going back and forth to Melbourne for a bit, and then Jo moved over here, and she started working as an arts publicist, and we just hit it off. I knew the second I met her that I wanted to marry her, which
did you? I was gonna ask if it was like love at first sight or a slow burn.
It was love at first sight.
Both ways?
Potentially. Potentially. We love each other so much, and so we've been together since we started dating in 2006, and then we just got married, and she's been an absolute rock for me through me being a booze hound to she gave up booze as well. It just wasn't working for either of us, and then she's just been a rock through this, and the hurt and the pain my diagnosis has had on her as well as me is just pretty insane.
Yeah, how is she?
She's really good. I mean, everything, it's waves, man. This whole cancer thing, it's waves. You'll be great. It's this. I actually liken it a bit to grief, where grief, when you initially have grief around a death or something, that grief hits you all the time and it just knocks you for six. And then as time passes, the grief hits you less, but it's just as strong. So you get the same shit feelings, but just less of the time. And it comes in waves. I mean, we're in a great spot now where I did treatment all to the end of right up to Christmas last year. I finished chemo 2 days before Christmas, doing sort of another 5 rounds of that. I did heavy radiation. And now I'm at a point where I can work, I'm feeling great. I spent a lot of January studying sort of scientific papers and drawing up a protocol for myself to use health-wise for the next 3 months to see if I can slow the progression of tumours or stop the progression of tumours. And so when I scan in May, I'll see whether this protocol I've sort of
has worked.
Put together has worked. So I really enjoy that. But then the what I'm doing is just is making me feel really healthy as well. So
the treatment you had just prior to Christmas, what does that do? Does that like shrink the?
Yeah, the aim was basically to shrink the tumours as much as possible to buy me. I liken this to trying to keep a classic car on the road. Like we don't have the exact parts we need at the moment, so we just need to keep the rust out, keep everything ticking along, because there is great advances being made in the cancer space. And you never know what's going to happen. You never know, my body might click in and discover what's... Because tumours sort of hide themselves. That's the hard thing. Like, everyone goes, oh, you just... Not everyone, but people think, oh, sure, you just strengthen your immune system. That works itself out. But they're nasty little bastards that hide themselves from the immune system. So, I mean, in an ideal world, my body would figure this out. But... I'm sort of using all the tools at my disposal to keep the tumour load as low as possible and just be as healthy as possible.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about before, just control the controllables. Wow. So did Jo come with you when you went for that first hospital visit, or?
Yeah, so she'd been... So this was the other absolute mindfuck around... the initial diagnosis and COVID. I couldn't go anywhere with another person because we were in...
Yeah, stage 4.
Bear in mind, we were in washing your bread bags from the supermarket, Buzz. You remember that?
It was intense.
It was like you come back from... You're wearing gloves at the supermarket, masks, you come home, you're washing everything... You got quarantine areas in your house. No one knew what was going on.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
So it was, you couldn't have support people at chemo, scans, or anything. I could for my specialist appointments, which was an absolute joy. But, I mean, she was there every step of the way, sitting in the car. I've got 2 young kids, so trying to keep things as... sane for the kids as possible while no one's being able to leave the house. So it was intense. It was really intense. And the main thing is I'm blessed for my family and my friends who just circled the wagons and looked after everything.
Well, I think this is a case of you reap what you sow. So like what you're getting now is like a accumulation, I guess, of the work that you've done and the love that you've given out your entire life.
Yeah, and that's what I've always been about, is love. And it's something that I sort of got across in the interview, which I'm very about, is I'm not a fuck cancer, I'm fighting cancer guy. I actually it's just a part of me that's gone haywire. It's some cells in me that have gone haywire. And I'm just trying to send love to it. And... just the process of love and giving out love does create a better space. It's almost like the idea of I love the idea of doing good deeds for people and not telling them about the good deeds, just doing it. Then they think the world's a better place because good things are happening to them. So then they in turn think the world's a better place, so they act like the world's a better place. So it's just sending some goodness out into the world, because it needs it at the moment.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, it's if no matter what side of things you sit on, COVID just created an even more divisive time, let alone the way politics, everything seems to have gone into very tribalism of
it's nasty.
our camp against their camp
absolutely.
and so forth. And so if you can put a bit more love out there, I'm into that.
Absolutely. And so you got 2 kids, Charlie and Lucy. How old are they?
They are 10 and 7.
Right. What are they like? Good kids? Are they similar or are they quite different?
Very different.
Yeah.
I sort of have so much in common with my son. He's a little legend. He's just started playing.
So he's the elder?
Yeah, he's 10. He's just started playing rugby last year, and he's so into it. And we just share a lot of interests. And then Lucy's so cheeky and funny, and being a parent is something that I'd sort of always wanted to do, but I had no idea how to do. So
well, I don't think anyone does.
No,
do they?
so it is just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And it was hard, man. It was really hard. And then it's just sort of working itself out, and I think it's becoming easier mainly because I'm figuring out who I am, and I'm figuring out what triggers me and how to avoid triggers and those sort of things. So I think not enough people spend time learning who they are, and for me that can only happen when I turn off TV, put down my phone, step away from computer or iPad or whatever, and just sit. Not meditate, just sit and sort of figure out who I am. And
what do you mean, on your own? Just on your own?
Yeah, I recommend people just sit down, and because people are scared of
their own thoughts.
Yeah, but there's nothing to be scared of your own thoughts. They're just electrical firings that come and go. Memories are just electrical firings that come and go. They may or may not be right, you know? Like I remember, I have memories sometimes. I'll talk to a mate about, say, filming Insert or something, and then they have a slight different memory of how it went down. It's still broadly the same thing, but it's amazing how wrong eyewitness accounts are, so it's like, wow, I might remember things wrong or whatever. So they're just mental firings in your mind.
So when you get the diagnosis, how long after that do you tell the kids, or what do you and your wife tell the kids?
Straight away,
do you?
Pretty much.
What do you say though? How do you?
Well, it's all about short term stuff, because that's all this is.
Yes.
So it's about, I'm in treatment to this, then I'll have a break. I've got the summer off. I might have to have a bit more treatment. This is what I'm dealing with. I might need some surgery. Bite-sized information. Basically giving...
what they can process.
Yeah, adults like to over-talk too much. It's sort of, I like to broadly lay out what's going on and then answer any questions that they have. And you've got to be very careful, I think, talking to other people's children. That's the worry I had about going public, is I don't want people coming up and talking to my children about it, because people often come in with the best of intentions with things and then
I would sit here and say, who the fuck would do that? But there are people that would.
Yeah, there are, and they might think they're helping, but they're not. It's like if someone tells you they have cancer, don't tell your story of how your auntie had cancer, because that's what people do. Someone's talking about something, you go, I know something, I have a related question.
Yeah, and I think it comes from a genuine place, but...
Yeah, it does come from a good place 90% of the time, but everyone's cancer story is different. So I don't need to hear about your auntie's story. I'll talk to your auntie about that, because I feel I suddenly do have a bond with, if I bump into someone who's going through a similar journey to me, you do sort of have
connect.
It's a bit like the war, you know, how people have fought in the war, come back, and they relate to other people who've been there, because you can't explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've been the partner of someone who you've sort of been there, or you've been like a support person who's been through this, you've taken on some of that trauma. But there's so much trauma there. And I feel like I've addressed the trauma as it was happening, which is good. And I feel like I've come out without too much PTSD, but I'll talk to you after a massive mushrooms trip, and then I'll see whether I've... That's the next step for me.
Well, that's the... is it actually?
Yeah, I definitely want to do a therapeutic mushroom journey.
In a controlled environment?
Yeah, controlled. I've done plenty of psychedelics in my life, and...
I feel like you wouldn't freak out. Even though you've been clean and sober for many years now, you'd better...
Yeah, I think there's I don't look at therapeutic mushrooms as like breaking a sobriety thing. But then I'm also aware of time and place, and there's so many factors that need to be right in that. And I just noticed Australia's actually just suddenly made MDMA and mushrooms legal.
Have they? What states?
Yeah. Oh no. I think I saw that as a post yesterday. Then I did a bit of a dive and went, oh no, there's a lot of caveats on that.
Right. So I can't just fly to Canberra.
It's not party pills at the dairy. This is. I think they've just legalised it for use in therapy.
Right. Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's a good step in the right direction.
And then of course, then I started looking into it. Then I listened to this horrific podcast series about how wrong it can go of therapists abusing their patients and preying on vulnerable people.
Jesus.
So as with whenever there's anything good, humans will find the bad side to it.
Do you think you've changed? I mean, you, as we've discussed a few times through this podcast, like you've been a great guy all along, but do you think you've changed as a husband and father?
Yeah, so I love change. I've always loved change, and the only thing in this life that's guaranteed is change.
Yeah.
Things are going to change, and we're just energy. We're made of energy, and that energy changes constantly. I have really, really worked on being a better husband and
in what
father.
way?
Not coming from a point of view of I'm a bad husband or father.
Just be better, 10% better?
Yeah, just try and be a better person. Realise that my temper, I got short and then I dealt with that interaction badly, or they're a bit shitty at me. Instead of it's their problem, what happened, trying to unbiasedly look at things. And relationships are hard. Friendships are hard to be, it takes effort.
Also, as we've said, no one has a bad word to say about you, and no one has a bad interaction with you. But human nature, you tend to save your worst behaviour for the people you love the most.
Yeah, because they see you at the hardest times. You snap at people. You misread things. I mean, my wife and I both work at our relationship, which is why I believe it's in the strongest point it has been, even though we're in the hardest point maybe that it has been. And because not only did we have that cancer diagnosis, we were dealing with what so many parents were dealing with, of homeschooling, being around people too much. Both my wife and I thrive by ourselves. We need alone time.
I get it.
I love being alone. I'd rather travel internationally by myself than with someone else. Not with, like, I'd love to do it with my wife, but when I was younger, I wouldn't want to go on an OE with a mate. I'd rather do it by myself. I'm that kind of guy. She's very similar. So being alone makes us better people. So I would, during chemo and that, I would go out to Piha for 2 days at the end of a chemo session, because often after chemo, I found for my journey, the 2 days after chemo were harder than when your body was purging everything. So I'd go out to Piha, chill out, be in nature as much as I can.
Yeah, you love that place.
Get in the water. I love the place.
Yeah.
I love the bush. I love the ocean. If anything, this journey away from booze and towards health has towards a sort of full final healing. Nature is the answer to me, and finding intuition and listening to intuition, like the whole way through it, I've always been interested in fasting, and fasting kept popping up in my mind. And then you've got to listen to this. I was like, shit, fasting might actually be a massive tool for me in this. And now I've sort of embraced it. What I'm doing through the next 3 months is doing longer fasts of sort of doing a 3-day and a 5-day fast once a month, and because it helped me so much in chemotherapy, and so I've sort of been investigating that and studying the science behind that, and I'm blessed to have a dad who wasn't only an actor, he was a scientist at the DSIR, he was a forensic toxicologist.
That's right, didn't he?
He introduced
the breathalyzer.
The breathalyzer, he was one of the people introducing the breathalyzer.
Fun fact.
So I always had this massive respect for science and studying, so I enjoy finding the science behind things. It also gives you a skeptical mind of trying to prove things. So I like finding things, trying to listen to my intuition, listening to your gut. You have all the knowledge you need to live inside you. You don't need to keep looking things up on the internet. I think this goes back to that, just sit and listen to yourself, you know. Looking at the geniuses in history, they just come up with these genius ideas. You know, like they have this knowledge inside of them. And I think humans now, because we have the joy of the internet, which has so many goods, we outsource a bit of our knowledge when in terms of living, you have an internal knowledge.
Yeah. So, so stage 4, when people hear that, they you must see it. When people see you, they give you eyes of pity.
Yeah, it freaks people out because also another reason why I wanted to be public was I sort of told a mate who I bumped into who I hadn't seen for 5 years, and they almost fell over. Whereas I was quite blasé about it because I've been living.
You've told the story so many times.
Yeah, I've been living with it, and sort of I passed on the information. Stage 4 just means it has moved from one place to another.
So it's not a death sentence.
No, stage 4 is just it's moved from one place to another. So it's treatable. I think also the fact is now people live a lot longer with advanced cancer. So I'm not one who's into timelines, and I don't Google things and this percentage of people did this, because everyone's cancer journey is so different. Everyone's health journey is so different. What works for you might not work for somebody else. This tip worked amazingly for someone, it might not work for me. So this is just something I'm going through. I've built up a toolbox of things that help me. This is where over time, and I'm sort of putting together a talk that has the tools in there, and sort of I'm trying to figure out at the moment what tools worked for me that were little that are personalised or whatever, and not a protocol, but a toolbox I could give other people to help either in a work environment or a health environment or just making the day easier. Yeah,
well, I feel like the things that you're doing, like the meditation and the mindfulness and just watching what you eat and sobriety, I think that they could help anyone, whether you've got a disease or not.
Yeah, and just it's getting into that state which you'd know when you're doing long distance running, where you're never trying to focus on one thing, like in terms of the fact that you're 3Ks in to a 40 odd K race, and you've got a little niggle on your toe or whatever. And then you just start going, okay, 37 more Ks on this toe, and this is giving me a bit of jip now. You can't just focus on that. Getting into a mental state where you can move past that, you can focus on the broader picture, and this is where I love. I get a bit fascinated with ultra sort of athletes like Rich Roll, who has a
he's got an amazing podcast.
He just has amazing people on it. These sort of ultra athletes that go, Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer. Yeah. These people who just put their bodies under horrendous sort of stress, and how they deal with that. And Rich Roll actually had a guest on called Tony Riddle, I think his name is, and he ran all these peaks in the UK in bare feet. He's all about rewilding and
grounding with the earth,
taking things back to nature. And I read his book, and it gave me a lot of things. So I'm someone who I love learning, but then I also love trusting myself.
Absolutely. And what's next work-wise? It seems like you're not slowing down.
No, I'm doing a TV show that will all become apparent. I can't really talk about.
To do with the diagnosis?
No. I've got something like that in the works, which I'm working on. It's a hard thing to frame. So I'm sort of working on that. I'm doing a couple of other projects. I'm doing a lot of live gigs. It was a trip actually last week. I did the interview on a Friday. Then the next Friday I had a stand-up gig in New Plymouth, public stand-up gig, and I was like, this is going to be a massive mindfuck for me, going on stage, having this double thought. People have seen me, seen the interview, what's the vibe going to be like? So I rang up Scotty at the Classic and went, can I just go on stage for a few minutes on Wednesday? I need to get onto a stage and figure out.
Oh, so like rehearse in a way, or
just figure out what the vibe is,
right?
And what my vibe is. And on Wednesday I went out. I stupidly then decided to do all new material as well as just figure out. So it wasn't like go out, get the vibe, then hit a few jokes I know work. So I went out, and that was okay, a bit of a shambles, and it freaked me out. But then
why did it freak you out?
Because I didn't know how to frame the cancer thing, because it's like going into something heavy, then segueing out into jokes is quite hard, especially when it's so personal. And I've got so much to say, but it needs to be condensed. So Wednesday was a bit weird. Then just went out in front of this crowd in New Plymouth who was so beautiful and had the most probably one of the top 5 gigs of my life.
Really?
Like, it was, you know, as a stand-up, it's been a good gig when I went 5 minutes over my time, came off, and went, oh shit, there was 3 jokes I didn't do. So that's when I know it's just been fun, where I've been riffing. I had a bit of cancer chat. It just was amazing. So then that went, I'm just massively back in love with stand-up. So I've got a few shows coming up, got a few corporate gigs. I've got a nice little balance.
Busy. You love being busy though, right?
Yeah, I love being busy with things I love doing. I'm playing cricket. I've always played cricket. I play cricket every Monday night. Back doing that. And then in May, we'll scan. We'll see what the situation is. Might need some more treatment, might not, but I'm just going to keep taking every day as it comes. Yeah,
well, you seem so optimistic about staying healthy or even recovering. So these last few questions might work, might not. But I thought about you the other day. The book by Mark Manson, Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck. Have you read that book?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So there's a quote in there, and I was reading this after watching the interview you did with Jackie Brown, and I started welling up, like thinking about you when I read this. the more I think about my own death, the brighter life gets. The quieter the world becomes, the easier decisions become.
Yeah. I recommend everyone meditate on their own death every day.
Did you do this pre-diagnosis or no?
Not really. I was aware of it. But it massively puts things into perspective.
Yes.
It massively... If you've got a decision of something you'd want to do or don't want to do, taking a bit of time to just sort of think, when I'm on that deathbed or whatever, will I be glad I did this?
Yeah.
Or I just think it is a great way of crystallizing life, and not in a negative way.
No.
But I think it's a thing of being aware of the clock can make you appreciate the moments more. I think just be aware of the clock.
Well, for any one of us, you never know when that clock's going to run out, do you?
That's the thing. What I've got, I don't know whether that's going to be the thing that gets me. Like that's the thing. There's plenty of stories of people living way past their diagnosis.
Absolutely.
There's you see so many tragedies from even the recent flooding. People passed away. They weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
Peter Blake didn't think he'd be killed by pirates in the Amazon. Like the crazy shit happens.
Yeah,
so
no one saw that
just
coming.
live every moment you can. And it's so cliche, the word mindfulness now.
Yeah, it is.
It's been so adopted by the sort of inspo, Fitspo, Instagram influencer buzz, mindful in a beautiful font and shit. But actually being a bit more mindful about the food you eat, the exercise you do, how many times you pick up your phone, all that shit, your interactions with people, the words you say to people.
Yeah.
Just take a bit more I suppose mindfulness, I think intention's a better word for me. I'm just trying to do things with intention. Like when I pick up a phone, what's my intention here? Because, so many times I'll go, oh, shit, I've got to reply to that email. Then all of a sudden,
what am I doing on my...
Yeah, and then I'm like, fuck, I'm on Instagram, and I've just looked at Twitter, and
It's
then
been an hour.
And then someone mentioned, oh, you should check out turkey tail mushrooms now. I'm Googling them, and I'm like...
What is that?
Oh, they're amazing, by the way. But then I'm like, oh, I haven't even replied to that email. So, like, intentionally going, right, I'll reply to this email, I'll put my phone back down. It's hard. I'm not good at it, but I'm just trying to...
But if you're aware of it, suddenly you become better at it.
So intention is something, and that's something I struggled a lot around food. I'm a real foodie, so I have a sweet tooth, I have a pizza tooth, I don't even know if that's a phrase. I've got all the teeth. So actually really focusing, for me, dialing in on nutrition and vitamins and minerals and really dialing in on that has been an interesting journey.
Are you sure you want to do these fasts?
I love fasting.
Yeah.
But the thing is doing it properly, like, because the idea is still having making sure all your nutrients are right and everything. So for me, it's a massive project, and it's something that I want to do properly, because I wanted to figure out something. I'll see if this can help me. I'll do it for 3 months, and then I'll scan, and then I'll know. It might not work for everyone, but I'll know
if it works for you.
Then I'll go, okay, cool, this is a way I can live that can slow this thing down.
And what are you scared of?
I'm scared, outside of roller coasters.
We're all scared of them. Apart from the corkscrew at Rainbow's End, that's nothing to be fearful of.
Although I did punch my cousin on that once because I was too scared. When I get scared, I start punching people. It's a bad trait. I suppose I'm scared of going without giving all I have to give. Like I I feel there's so much I have to give as a parent. I feel I've got a young boy, and I think navigating the world as a male with compassion and love and sharing your feelings, and that is very important. So trying to help my son on a journey of masculinity is something that I really want to do. So I have a fear of not being able to do that, and not being there for my kids, I suppose, is a fear. But then I think that's a fear of a lot of adults, but mine might be a bit more crystallized.
That's so unselfish.
Yeah, but that's what is, because the thing is, when I'm gone, it doesn't affect me. I don't have any fear of death, because that's that death. Out of the whole of life, death's the easy part. Like, that's just comes and that happens. But I suppose it's being there, because for me, I get so much joy out of people and helping people, or just being with people. So not being there, but then if you think about not being there for people, that actually comes back to your own ego.
Yeah.
Because you're just really rating yourself.
But you probably should, because you do brighten up every room you walk into.
Yeah, and I love,
make every room that much better.
There's nothing better than just coming in. This is what I love my job of. Whenever I go into radio station, when I go in to do commentary work that I do, just going in and talking rubbish with people and having a laugh is so much fun, and bringing some happiness to people is awesome. So as long as I can keep doing that, I've won. And I grew up with a lot of fear. I think I was scared. I was pretty scared of things, things in the night. I was scared of robbers. I was just quite scared of things. Which
roller coasters,
roller coasters. I think everyone's scared of things.
Yeah.
And I don't have much fear now. This diagnosis has taken a lot of fear away from me, because the one thing I was more scared of in my life than anything was cancer. I'd fast forward through cancer in shows. I've never watched the first season of Breaking Bad. One, because it's fucking rubbish compared to the rest of the season. Just thought I'd get one controversial thing in there. But no, because of the cancer plot. And now I've not only faced it, I've faced the hardest parts of it, and I've chosen not to suffer. Because you can go through the hardness, like physically it's hard. Physically it hurts. I've been cut open everywhere. I've done this chemo and that hurts, but I chose not to suffer through any of it, because you can choose whether to suffer or not. And I'm not someone who wants to... So
suffering's a different thing to pain?
Yeah, suffering's the mental
right
thing of... It's very easy. I find it could be easy to get into the woe is me.
Oh, so suffering as an attitude.
I've got this affliction. Yeah. It's like, okay, this fucking hurts. How am I going to deal with this pain and move on from this? And for me, dealing with it is looking it straight in the eyes, dealing with every dark thought and acknowledging every bit of darkness.
Are you braver and less of a wuss than what you maybe thought you were?
Yeah. Hard out.
You're a badass.
I would faint. I fainted at a lab test getting a normal blood test. That's how scared of needles I was. The first time I had to have an injection. You'd be of the same age and stage of when you're like 11 getting those...
tetanus or whatever it was.
Yeah, like at school they came round and injected you, and girls got a different one, the MMR and tetanus. Yeah,
I do remember that.
And so we, for some reason, were given them in front of assembly. You'd walk up onto stage and get injected. I'd love to see the anti-vaxxers talk about that. Back in the day, you'd walk on stage at school and get injected. And I fainted and fell over in front of the whole school. And then now I don't even think about it. So it's made me stronger, and it's also made me realise what fear is and how to overcome fear.
And I think I'm much the same as you. I've lived most of my life in fear, and it's held me back from doing things that I look back now from the perspective of being a 50-year-old man. It's like, why didn't I just do that anyway?
It's amazing how age gives you that sort of, one, you give less of a fuck, and two, you're less scared. And you look back and go, those opportunities, why didn't I just go in?
I should have just done it. What was the worst that could have happened?
And that thing also, with opportunities, why didn't I just ask them?
Yeah.
Why didn't I just put myself out there? Because you're scared, and then you realise they could have just said no.
That's so true. My fears are different now, and my fears are like if the tiled steps are wet.
Yeah.
I'm fearful of walking down them in my Allbirds. Do you have any regrets?
It's weird. There's things, cringe drunk moments that you think back on. I was actually thinking the other day whether I regretted my drinking, whether I regretted, those moments you think back and go, oh, I thought that was a funny joke, but that could have been a bit mean. Or that was a bit... Yeah.
I'm pleased you do that too.
Yeah. But then I sort of keep coming back to this point of going, actually, no, all those moments got me to this moment, and I'm really happy where I am here. I regret my flatmate being asleep and me being really hammered and putting full noise fireworks under his duvet and lighting them, and then in hindsight I could have killed him and burned down the flat.
Shit.
That is.
How old were you then?
Early 20s.
Oh, okay, old enough to know better. The amount of things like young dudes do like that, and you think that could have been.
I think back on that actually, and like now, at the time it was like, fuck, that went too far. But you think back and go, that is like killing someone and burning a house down situation. And so that's the thing I definitely regret.
You still friends with that person?
Yeah, best friends.
Oh, is that right?
That shows
Who is it? Apologise to them now.
I've apologised many, many times. Don't worry, it has not been forgotten.
When did you start to regret that? Like, was it immediately afterwards, or when you had kids?
Just as I lit the fuse. But there's no going back with fireworks.
Oh my fucking God. Oh, that is outrageous. Oh, that is so lucky. That's dodging a bullet shit there for him and for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It changed the trajectory of so many lives.
Absolutely.
And last one, I know you're into like Eastern sort of spirituality and Buddhism. But what are your thoughts about an afterlife or anything? What happens?
It's actually something I think about. I don't think there's an afterlife in terms of you functioning in any way like you do on this earth, in terms of how your brain works, how thoughts work. I think there's definitely something that's beyond space and time that creates energy. Everything in the universe is energy. We are just energy that then turn into a different type of energy. I definitely believe in more of a global consciousness. And I sort of believe that when you die, your conscious goes into the consciousness, but I don't know what happens. I don't think you communicate with people and who you used to know and that sort of thing. I think you just go into space. I'm really intrigued to see what happens. But no, I just think you go back into the energy of the universe. And I love space. I love the universe. I think we are just blessed to be here, and I think people need to look at the miracle of Earth and life and just step back from day-to-day conflicts and all that and go, fuck, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and we're only here for a very short time on the big scheme of things.
Even if you live the longest life,
absolutely.
it's a dot.
Absolutely. Hey, well, man, it's been wonderful having you over here today.
Oh, such a pleasure, Dom.
I'm really sorry that you, of all people, are going through this at the moment, but thanks for sharing your stories and your lessons, and hopefully you'll be around for a long time yet.
Yeah, hopefully I'll come back and have another chat on how to cure cancer.
Well, if anyone can, man. I mean, you're sitting in front of me at the moment. You look as good and as well and as healthy as what I've ever seen you before.
That's all I'm trying to do. So
plump, red cheeks.
Yep. A bit of ruddy sunshine. Just preparing for the next cyclone.
Yeah. No, but congratulations on everything you've done. You've been like an absolute treat for New Zealand for the last 20 years, and it's been so much fun like watching your progression over those years, and long may it continue.
Oh, thanks, Dom.
Love you, Dai.
Cheers, mate.